My name's Ethan Cole, and for over a decade, I was the backbone of Westbridge Manufacturing's tech division. 11 years of building, coding, securing, and optimizing. And it all came crashing down over lunch. It was supposed to be a casual catch-up with our CEO, Malcolm Grayson, scheduled at Prescott's, the kind of high-end steakhouse where deals are made. Not careers ended. As soon as I sat down, I knew something was off. Malcolm didn't even pretend to ease into it. "Ethan," he said, slicing into his filet mignon like he hadn't just upended my life. "We're heading in a new direction." He talked about vision, innovation, fresh leadership. Code 4, we're replacing you with someone younger and cheaper. That someone was Noah Whitaker, the owner's freshly minted nephew from Stanford's grad program. "Brilliant kid," Malcolm said. "Specialized in systems transformation." I nodded, keeping a neutral smile on my face. These things happen, right? What no one knew was, I saw it coming. The signs had been piling up for months. Subtle changes, cancelled meetings, restricted access, vague audits. My admin credentials had quietly been downgraded. My name disappeared from leadership emails. That lunch? It was just the confirmation I needed. I agreed to a 6-week transition. Signed the NDA without flinching. Smiled through dessert like I hadn't just been gutted. Back at the office, I sat down at my desk, already locked out of half the tools I built. It was official. But what they didn't realize was, while they were plotting my exit, I had already been documenting everything. Quietly. Thoroughly. I wasn't going to sabotage anything, but I wasn't going to hand over a legacy for free either. They thought I'd walk away quietly, fade into the background like some obsolete software. But the thing about building something from scratch, when it's your blood, sweat, and code, is that every line, every system, every workaround, it remembers you. And I was far from done. When I first joined Westbridge Manufacturing, I wasn't planning to stay long. I had just gone through a rough divorce, 7 years of marriage undone in a single conversation, and I needed a distraction, something to keep my mind busy while I figured out what came next. Westbridge's IT systems were a mess after a ransomware attack, and they needed someone to patch things together fast. I figured I'd be there a few months. That was 11 years ago. Back then, the entire company was running on outdated systems that could have crashed at any moment. Passwords on sticky notes, no real security protocols. And a help desk that consisted of just 3 overwhelmed employees. I saw potential, not just in the infrastructure, but in the people. The operations team knew machines, but computers? Not so much. So I pitched a 5-year overhaul plan to Malcolm. He gave me the green light, and I got to work. I rebuilt everything from the ground up. Designed layered security protocols. Implemented real-time monitoring, trained an entire department. Eventually, I turned that skeleton crew into a 30-person IT force that kept 3 facilities running around the clock. When the East Coast blackout hit a few years ago, we were the only manufacturer in the region still online. That got the board's attention. That was the moment everything changed. My budget tripled. I started getting invited to meetings. I brought on people like Marissa, sharp, loyal, and quick on her feet, and Jordan, a coder who could troubleshoot in his sleep. We weren't just keeping the lights on anymore, we were powering the entire company forward. I thought I'd found my place. But about 6 months ago, the cracks started to show. A consultant showed up unannounced asking pointed questions about systems I had personally built. My access to internal reports quietly disappeared. Malcolm started skipping our weekly briefings. Then I overheard the company's owner, Charles Whitaker, talking about his brilliant nephew Noah, how Silicon Valley firms were lining up to hire him. I shrugged it off. I shouldn't have. By the time Marissa told me she was invited to a strategic planning session I should have led, I knew something was coming. She said when she brought up my name, Malcolm changed the subject. "They're planning around you," she said quietly. And she was right. 2 days after that lunch with Malcolm, I found myself in the server room long after everyone else had gone home. It was quiet, the hum of machines, the soft blinking of servers, the only sound in the building. I'd spent years in that room. Knew every wire, every blinking light, every temperature reading. It was more familiar to me than my own apartment. That night, I wasn't just there out of habit. I was saying goodbye, in a way. But I was also watching. Waiting. I turned around when I heard the door open. Noah Whitaker. Clean-shaven, custom-tailored, and cocky in that way only a 30-year-old Stanford grad with connections could be. He walked in like he already owned the place. "Just getting the lay of the land," he said casually, nodding toward the server racks. "Routine checks," I replied, trying to keep my voice even. "Need something?" "Nope. Just wanted to see the setup. Malcolm said you'd be showing me around soon." "Did he now?" Noah walked the room, scanning everything. "Solid configuration," he remarked. "Bit old school, but clean. Efficient." Old school. I'd updated the entire system 8 months ago. This wasn't some out-of-the-box solution. It was customized. Purpose-built for Westbridge's equipment and workflow. Then he said the thing that made my blood run cold. "I've been reviewing your documentation. Very thorough. I've got a few ideas for modernization." Modernization. It was the word people use right before they start tearing apart what they don't understand. After he left, I sat back at my desk and pulled up the server access logs. Noah's credentials had been created 3 weeks before Malcolm's lunch invite. Not only had he been given full admin access, he'd already browsed my documentation library, poked through my architecture blueprints, and even accessed deployment logs I hadn't touched in months. They hadn't just decided over lunch. This had been planned for weeks. Months. I pulled out my phone and texted Jordan. "Coffee at 6:30 tomorrow. Joe's Diner. Need to talk." I didn't know exactly what the next step was. But I knew one thing for certain. They were mining everything I'd built. And I wasn't about to let them walk away with it. Jordan was already sitting at a corner booth when I arrived at Joe's Diner. He looked like he hadn't slept, and when I slid into the seat across from him, he didn't waste time on small talk. "They're phasing me out," I said plainly. He nodded once, slowly. "I figured. They've been asking weird questions lately. Stuff only you would know. Trying to get me to explain your systems in detail." "How long?" "Couple of weeks now," he admitted. "I should have told you sooner." I didn't blame him. Jordan had 2 kids, a mortgage, and a wife on maternity leave. The guy couldn't afford to rock the boat. "I get it," I said. "But I need to know who's still loyal." Jordan hesitated for a moment, then leaned in. "Marissa's with you. So are a few others, Jamie, Nick. The people who actually know what it takes to keep this place from falling apart." I nodded. "Good. I'm not trying to burn anything down. But I'm not giving it all away, either." He tilted his head. "So what's the plan?" I took a sip of my coffee. "They think everything is in the documentation. But it's not. You know it. I know it. There's proprietary code, custom tools, and undocumented patches they wouldn't even recognize if it hit them in the face." "The monitoring system?" he asked. "And the supplier interface. The diagnostic patches, the automation scripts, all of it," I said. "Some of it I built before I ever stepped foot in Westbridge." Jordan stared at me. "So what do you want me to do?" "I need copies. Of everything I personally developed." Quietly. "I'll handle the legal side. You just make sure the originals are safe." He looked around the diner like someone might be watching. Then met my gaze again. Okay. But Ethan, are you sure this is the road you want to go down? I didn't answer right away. But deep down, I knew. I'd already made the decision. They could erase my name from the system. But they'd never erase the work I'd done, or take what was mine. The official announcement came the following week during our quarterly all-hands meeting. Malcolm stood at the podium with his usual slick confidence, flanked by Noah, who looked like he'd just stepped off the cover of a startup magazine. Exciting changes, Malcolm called them. A new chapter in Westbridge's technological future. Then came the kicker. Ethan Cole has been instrumental in building our IT infrastructure. And we are grateful for his contributions as he transitions leadership to Noah Whitaker over the next 6 weeks. He didn't even look at me when he said it. Murmurs spread through the room. A few people actually gasped. Most of the IT team looked stunned, especially Marissa, who caught my eye across the room. I gave her the smallest of nods. It was enough. After the meeting, I asked for a sit-down with Malcolm and HR. I kept it professional, but I was direct. I pointed out that several systems, particularly the diagnostic interface and custom monitoring modules, were developed outside of company time, using my own tools and frameworks. Diane from HR slid a document across the table. Per your employment agreement, anything developed during your tenure is considered company property. Not everything, I said. Flipping to a copy of the original System Link Interface Agreement. This predates my employment. I licensed it to the company under non-exclusive terms. It's right here in the original paperwork, Malcolm even signed it. He shifted in his chair. That was 10 years ago, Ethan. The company has evolved. So has System Link. And every evolution has been built off my original architecture. I leaned forward, voice steady. All I want is recognition of my ownership and fair compensation. Malcolm exchanged a glance with Diane. We'll look into it, he said carefully. Great. In the meantime, I'll focus on the transition. But I knew what that look meant. They weren't going to look into it. They were going to stall, delay, and quietly lock me out of the very systems I created. And the next morning, that's exactly what they did. Access revoked. Credentials disabled. A new meeting on the calendar, hosted by Noah. No invitation for me. But I showed up anyway. And I watched him try to explain protocols he clearly didn't understand. It was only the beginning. Later that day, an email from the legal department hit my inbox. Cold. Impersonal. The company was asserting full ownership over all technical systems, including System Link. The platform I had developed before even joining Westbridge. They cited a vague clause about integrated technologies becoming company property. Then came the insult. A technology acquisition bonus of $5,000. A lifetime of work, reduced to a figure that wouldn't even cover a decent vacation. The next morning brought a deeper betrayal. Noah had scheduled private one-on-one meetings with each member of my team, under the guise of transition discussions. But these weren't handover meetings. They were evaluations. He was deciding who to keep and who to quietly replace. Jordan texted me afterward. He asked if your systems were actually necessary or just overly complicated. He's fishing for criticism. That night, I opened my personal email and found a message from one of our longtime suppliers. They were confused by a new licensing agreement sent from Westbridge. One I knew nothing about. I reviewed the contract. Malcolm had quietly authorized the transfer of my custom supplier integration tools to a third-party vendor. Turns out the vendor was a startup owned by one of Noah's former classmates. They weren't just phasing me out. They were dismantling my legacy and monetizing it. When I tried to access the backup servers to retrieve archived copies of my original code and tools, my credentials were already revoked. The system now belonged to them, or so they thought. I knew what I had to do. I needed leverage. Fast. That night, I called Darren Lane, a cybersecurity expert I'd worked with years ago. We weren't close, but he was sharp and, more importantly, discreet. We met at a roadside diner well outside the city. The kind of place that didn't ask questions. Legally, you're in a tight spot, Darren said after I laid everything out. But something's off. Why push you out now? The company's thriving. I've been asking myself the same question. Darren leaned back in his chair, thoughtful. Let me dig around a little. Just surface level. Nothing that leaves fingerprints. I nodded. That's all I need. Just the truth. 2 days later, he called me at 11 p.m. You're going to want to see this. Darren met me the next morning at his office, a cramped room above a strip mall with blinds drawn tight and a server rack humming quietly in the corner. He didn't waste time. They're selling, he said. Westbridge is being acquired. I blinked. By who? Technova Industries. A massive conglomerate out of Boston. They've been buying up mid-sized manufacturing firms. And get this, the acquisition deal hinges on two things, a modernized tech infrastructure and proof of seamless leadership transition. It hit me like a punch to the chest. They're replacing me to clean the books, I said slowly. To make the company look turnkey. Darren nodded. Your systems, specifically SystemLink, are called out directly in the valuation. It's considered the backbone of Westbridge's production capability. But Technova wants reassurance it can run without you. I sat back, letting it settle. And Malcolm? Charles Whitaker. Darren tapped on his laptop. Charles cashed out the majority of his shares last quarter. Malcolm and the exec team stand to walk away with golden parachutes, multi-million-dollar packages and advisory titles at Technova. The deal benefits them personally. And Noah? I asked. Technova sees him as the fresh face of innovation. Young, credentialed, clean slate. But get this, he's listed in internal memos as a transitional leader, not a long-term asset. Disposable. I muttered. Just like me. But what shattered me wasn't the acquisition or even the money. It was the emails Darren found, dated over 6 months back. While I was pulling 80-hour weeks cleaning up a major data breach, Malcolm and Charles had already been interviewing Noah behind closed doors. They had known. They had planned. And they had lied. That night, I drove to the old industrial warehouse where I'd first drafted the original framework for SystemLink. I sat in my car, watching the sky shift from black to gray. Remembering the fire I had when I first started building it, not for money, not for recognition, but because I believed it could make something better. The next morning, I tore through my storage closet until I found it, an old external hard drive I hadn't touched in years. I plugged it in and there it was. The original SystemLink code. The documentation. The emails from Malcolm confirming it was mine. Proof. Now, I had what I needed. The next day, I was summoned to a meeting with Malcolm, Noah, and Diane from HR. The tone was different, sharper. Colder. We've decided to accelerate your transition, Malcolm said without preamble. Your last day will be next Friday. 2 weeks instead of 6. I replied evenly. Any reason for the change? Diane answered before Malcolm could. Noah has demonstrated exceptional capability. And frankly, Ethan, your attitude hasn't supported a smooth handover. I gave a small nod. Pretending to consider their words. Understood, I said. So, you'll want everything wrapped by Wednesday? Yes, Noah said. That includes full documentation and walkthroughs of all major systems. And the matter of SystemLink? I asked. Have you had time to review the original agreements? Malcolm's jaw clenched. Our legal team maintains that any system integrated into our operations falls under company ownership. The severance package is generous, Diane added, sliding a folder toward me. I didn't touch it. I'll have my attorney take a look. Don't make this difficult, Malcolm warned. It won't change the outcome. We'll see, I said, standing up. As I walked out of that office, I fired off a quick text to Jordan. Plan B, tonight. 7 hours later, in the dimly lit parking lot of a grocery store on the edge of town, Jordan handed me a flash drive. Everything you asked for, he said quietly. Original code bases, deployment logs, access logs, authentication keys. All of it. I looked at him for a long second. Why'd you help me? He shrugged. Because they think we're all replaceable. That weekend, I didn't rest. I documented everything, every email, every line of code I'd written before joining Westbridge. Every contract clause that protected my ownership. I filed 3 provisional patents through a network of IP lawyers, covering the core components of SystemLink that made it work seamlessly with industrial machinery. On Monday morning, I walked into the office like everything was normal. Marissa was already at her desk, eyes tired, voice low. You heard about the accelerated timeline? I nodded. How's the team handling it? Not great. Noah called emergency meetings all weekend. Tried to reverse engineer your monitoring system. I raised an eyebrow. She leaned closer. He failed. Line 3 went down for 4 hours yesterday. 40 grand in lost output. I kept my expression neutral. Ethan, she said, voice even softer. I think I'm next. I paused. Do you trust me? She nodded without hesitation. I slid a sealed envelope across her desk. If anything happens this week, anything, open this. She didn't ask what was inside. She already knew. By Tuesday, everything was moving fast. I completed every bit of transition documentation Noah had requested. Sat through his planning meetings. Answered his questions like a model employee. On the surface, I played along. Behind the scenes, I was building something of my own. Darren had helped me set up a secure off-site server. That night, I uploaded the entire original SystemLink codebase, clean, documented, and independent of Westbridge's infrastructure. I created a standalone version that could run autonomously on any compatible system. Then, I added something new. A license validation layer. It wasn't malicious, not even hidden. It simply required a valid digital signature, mine, for the software to continue running beyond a fixed period. Without that verification, the system would remain intact but non-functional. The expiration date? 8 days after my official departure. By Wednesday morning, things started to shift. I woke up to an unexpected email in my personal inbox, from Technova Industries. The subject line: Invitation to discuss mutual business interests. They'd heard I was leaving Westbridge and were interested in my insights. Someone on their side was hedging their bets. I forwarded the message to my attorney and called Technova's VP of Operations directly. I'd be happy to speak after my final day, I said. He agreed without hesitation. That night, I executed the final update to the SystemLink modules still running on Westbridge's servers. They would continue to function until the expiration date, after which they'd display a clear message requesting license renewal. Nothing destructive. Just a clean, legal kill switch. On Thursday, Noah called me into his office. His tone was suspiciously casual. Some of the team says you've been acting differently. Anything I should know about? I met his gaze without blinking. Just focused on wrapping everything up. We're changing all system passwords tomorrow after your exit. Standard procedure. Makes sense, I said. Won't affect core functionality. He frowned. Meaning? System Link doesn't rely on admin credentials to run. It's self-sustaining once deployed. That's the beauty of it. I could see the doubt creeping in. He wasn't sure if I was threatening him or simply making conversation. He chose to ignore it. Legal will handle your final paperwork tomorrow. Looking forward to it, I said with a smile. That night, just before midnight, I sent a single line of code to my private server. Verification sequence Alpha 7, complete. The countdown had officially begun. Friday morning came, and with it, the end, at least on paper. I turned in my badge, signed the exit paperwork and declined the awkward farewell lunch Noah had arranged, much to Malcolm's visible relief. No goodbyes, no handshakes. Just quiet nods and forced smiles. 11 years, reduced to a formality. As I stepped into the parking lot, my phone buzzed. It was Jordan. They just finished resetting all the admin credentials. He said. Thanks for the heads up, I replied calmly. What happens now? He asked. I looked up at the cloudless sky. Now we wait. And wait, I did. I spent the weekend off-grid. Ignored every unknown number that tried to call. Slept more in those 2 days than I had in weeks. Because I knew what was coming, and I didn't need to watch it live. Monday morning. 9:17 a.m. Westbridge's production lines shifted into peak operation mode. And across all 3 facilities, every System Link interface displayed the same prompt. License expired, please contact developer to renew. By 9:20, line 1 came to a halt. By 9:45, the entire Westbridge operation was offline. At 10:30, my phone rang. Malcolm's number. I answered. Calm and composed. What the hell did you do? He barked. I didn't do anything, I said evenly. The software license expired. You're sabotaging us. Incorrect. It's standard license management. Clause 7 of the original agreement you signed clearly states System Link was licensed, not sold. Silence. I've sent a renewal agreement to your legal department, I continued. It outlines continued use terms, ownership recognition, and a non-disclosure clause regarding the nature of my departure. This is blackmail, he hissed. No, Malcolm. This is business. By 3 p.m. Their legal team had reviewed everything. By 5 o'clock, the agreement was signed. 3 days later, I sat across from Technova's VP of Operations in a sleek glass conference room downtown. He slid a contract across the table. We're still moving forward with the Westbridge acquisition, he said. But we want you to lead the technical integration. As a consultant, not an employee. The offer was double my old salary. Full autonomy. My own schedule. What about Noah? I asked. The VP gave a polite shrug. Mr. Whitaker is pursuing other opportunities. I signed the contract that afternoon. 2 weeks later, I got a call from Marissa. Noah's gone, she said. Quietly removed. The official story is that he chose to explore new opportunities. But everyone knows the truth. I didn't say much. I didn't have to. Turns out 3 major clients had threatened to pull their contracts after repeated system failures. Even after the license was renewed, Noah couldn't replicate the logic behind System Link's internal checks. Because the system wasn't just code. It was experience. It was understanding. It was me. Malcolm remained CEO during the acquisition, but from what I heard, his new title at Technova was Senior Strategic Advisor, a role with no team, no authority, and no decision-making power. Just a fancy office down the hall from the real players. I didn't feel the triumph I thought I would. Just peace. I used the first consultant payment from Technova to put a down payment on a small cabin by the lake, quiet, simple, with a deck that overlooked the water. The kind of place where you can watch the sunrise and remember who you are without needing validation from boardrooms or title plaques. 3 months later, Marissa joined my consulting firm. Then Jordan. Eventually, half of my old department came on board. Not as subordinates, but as partners. We built something new, leaner, smarter, freer. No middle managers. No office politics. Just good people solving real problems. Almost a year after I walked out of Westbridge, I ran into Malcolm at a downtown restaurant. He noticed me before I could turn away. For a moment, I thought he'd ignore me. But he walked over. "You won," he said quietly. I looked at him, really looked at him. The fatigue in his eyes, the slightly disheveled suit, the weight he now carried. "It wasn't about winning," I replied. "It was about knowing my worth." He nodded once. No defense. No excuses. Just a man who finally understood. As he walked away, I sat back and looked out the window. City lights flickered on across the river. I thought about systems, those we build, those we protect, and those we outgrow. Some break under pressure. Others evolve. And a few, if designed well enough, outlast the people who tried to bury them.